Hey guys, welcome back to Tribe of Unicorns. I'm your host Kendra Beavis, and today we're getting real about leadership. A lot of companies create a company culture in a manual with all these check boxes, and they think that because they have dress down Fridays and barbecues in the parking lot during the summer once in a while, and maybe a ping pong table in the break room, that their company culture box is checked. Well, Kristen Knowles is here to set you straight. This is a great episode for people in leadership positions in your company, or even solo entrepreneurs have something to learn here about creating a company culture from the very beginning. So grab a cup of coffee and check it out.
Hey guys, Kendra here. I just wanted to say a quick word about Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to get a podcast up and running literally in minutes, and it's free. There are creation tools that allowed you to record and edit right from your computer or even your phone. Even this recording, I'm doing right from my phone using Anchor, laying on my couch with my dog. So if you've ever wanted to try out podcasting, I highly recommend go check out Anchor at anchor.com and download your free app and give it a shot.
Hey guys, welcome back to Tribe of Unicorns. I'm your host, Kendra Beavis, and today I am sitting with Kristen Knowles. Kristen is the president of Brave Leaders Group, and I'm so excited to talk to you today. How are you?
I'm so excited to be here. I'm doing well. It is, dreary, gross day in Nashville, but doing what we can. But I'm so excited to be here with you and the rest of the tribe.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. So, what can you tell us about your journey to where you're at today?
Yeah, so my background was in corporate HR and leadership development. So, worked in corporate for over a decade and was really fortunate to be able to be head of HR, head of leadership development and culture and talent. And from there, I worked with a global technology company and we built these leadership programs that were incredibly transformational and scaled them all over the world and ended up winning several awards. But through it, I really wanted to understand what was it that made the difference, right? So, what is it that causes some people to really go through this transformational process and others just it doesn't land, right? Or what is it that makes the ability for a company to truly have an incredible culture, but others they work at it, they say that it's important, but it's not, right? So I ended up doing a bunch of research and discovering kind of some of the missing ingredients of what it really takes to have that transformation and to grow into strong cultures and leadership. And so that is what sparked me to wanting to create Brave Leaders Group and to create a solution out there that wasn't just off the shelf, out of the box, here, plug and play this, check off a box, say that you did some leadership development and go on with your day. But instead, how do we actually really connect leadership development and culture to an organization's strategic roadmap and their long-term goals, make sure they're working together so that they can truly scale and grow. And so that was what birthed kind of Brave Leaders Group and what we do.
So, you had done this for a company, and now you're out on your own?
Yes, so I worked in a few different companies. I worked
Okay.
in a behavioral health care company, and that was in a startup, and we grew that company very quickly and scaled that, quadrupling in size during the time I was there. And then worked for Assurian, which is a global technology company all over the world. And there we did this massive leadership program. That was probably the largest scale one I had ever built. And then also worked in healthcare technology companies and nonprofits and a few other companies as well to do a lot of this work. And so yeah, then I decided to step out on my own and build this and to really create solutions so that I wasn't just impacting one company that I was with, but how do we make this available to all leaders out there in all companies.
When you said you did some research on figuring out why it works for some and why it doesn't work for others, was that research you decided to do on your own personally, or and what made you
Yeah.
take that step? That's so
Yeah, so
fascinating.
so for me, what it was is we had just launched our executive leadership level in the leadership program. And so these were all basically high potentials who were going to be growing into the executive level in the organization. And what I started to see is we had some people who were, you could genuinely tell that they were having massive transformation and growth personally. Their teams were shifting and changing. They were very engaged in the process. And then we had other leaders, we had some senior directors and vice presidents who it was like pulling teeth just to get them to show up and doing anything. And it was almost like they were just going through the motions. And, we also weren't seeing that, right? So there was no real change happening in their teams. And so obviously I knew, okay, well, clearly engagement's a huge part of it. And I think it's easy just to kind of brush it off as, well, one of these leaders is engaged and one of them's not. But I started looking at going back and seeing, okay, out of everyone, the hundreds of people who had gone through the program, who are the people that we actually could look at measured results today? What were their engagement scores? What were some of the things that were shifting in some teams, and other teams they weren't improving at all? In fact, maybe they were getting worse. Why was that? And so I wanted to understand, was there a connection? That was my
Mm.
main thing, is was there any specific connection that we could include in leadership development and focus on that area so that we could have better results across the board? And so that's what really sparked it. And through it, a couple of things that really stood out. The two main things were the leaders who were doing what they were doing because of a deeper purpose. That was the
Mm.
main one that we saw a difference. The ones who weren't, it wasn't just about climbing a corporate ladder, trying to get their next promotion. It wasn't any of those things. And it wasn't tied to their personal, goals of, okay, well, I'm trying to get to this level in this time. But the leaders who, when you would talk to them, you would hear things like, well, I know that my passion is to, really develop people and help bring them along, or my purpose is, and you would hear them talk about it in a very general sense. And this place of, even if they weren't in this specific job, they would be looking for a way to live that out in a different area. And so again, this kind of general overarching purpose of why they were doing that. That was the main thing that was different. The other big piece that seemed to be across the board were leaders who were either already doing or who had previously done a lot of internal work. So a lot of the self-leadership internal work, those leaders were the ones we saw really having the biggest transformation within the learning that they were going through and within their teams. And so that's one of the things that we do now is we build custom leadership development and also help design culture. But we do it by making sure that the self leadership and that internal work is included in the process, because you have to do that work. If you don't do that, if you're unwilling to, then you're just getting a bunch of head knowledge that's honestly a waste of time, a waste of money. It doesn't land anywhere. And so that's the reason why we have some of the worst scores in leadership development. It's honestly, as an industry, it's like a multi-billion-dollar industry that only about 30% of CEOs feel like that it is actually meeting their need. I'm like, those are very poor scores. And I
Yeah.
think it's because we think that we can check a box on a lot of it, take something off the shelf, here, go learn about this, and then go about their day, but they've not actually had any actual real change.
Right, right. Yeah. So that because I see that with companies that I work with where there's a disjointedness within the company culture where, a lot of people are striving to change, level up, um, but there's not like a real environment for that sort of thing. Like it's not. Have you seen that shift over the years? Because I feel like that's a fairly new thing where it's not just you go to work and you do your job.
Mhm.
It's much more, nurture your employees, really stand up and lead by example. When did that start to shift?
So there was a big shift, I would say, probably about seven, you know, 6 to 8 years ago, maybe 10, but there's been a big push in the area of engagement. So Gallup, who most people have heard of from,
Hmm.
they're one of the leaders in kind of engagement surveys. Gallup really started pushing and bringing to light that, hey, poor engagement is actually not something that just is an HR issue. It actually affects your bottom line, your sales, your customer relations, right? So they have done a great job at really highlighting what low engagement will actually cause from the bottom line standpoint, and how people engage with clients and with customers and all of that. And so through that, now that we have buy-in typically from the top of, okay, we've got to improve engagement so that we can, help our bottom line, make sure that our customers are getting their needs met, and all of that. So there's a push and understanding that there's a need for engagement, but I think the breakdown that still is occurring is we do not have a clear understanding of how to do something about it and how to really move the needle.
Right.
And so there's tons of things out there that are very program initiative based. So, okay, let's implement this recognition program. And recognition is great. But if we are just trying to over engineer something, but not getting to the root cause of what's happening and why the culture can't stand it up, that's the reason why a lot of these things take a long time to actually implement into the company. It's why I think people don't get bought in. It's why we don't see that return on investment that we're doing. So the real work has to be done. And that was, again, one of the reasons why I got into this. Is from a culture standpoint, I saw so much money going into things that we were having to force feed, when really it was like, okay, people want engagement. Why are we having to force this down people's throats? Something
Right.
is not clicking. And, then COVID happened, and we're able to understand, okay, all of those initiatives, the cool office parties, and how we all get together and we have neat furniture and open environment and you can wear what you want. Like, none of that's actually culture, right? Those are all fun perks. And so we actually now are having to realize that the real work of culture is very much ingrained into how people interact, how decisions are made, our policies, our procedures, our processes. And if we fix those areas, engagement's a natural byproduct.
Ugh, that makes a lot of sense. Do you feel it always has to start at the top, right? I mean, if the CEO or whoever it is isn't on board, I mean, how could it possibly be successful?
Right. Well, yeah, I think it always needs to start from the top. And that is one of the challenges. Is you'll have CEOs who understand the need for it. But it is understandable, the balance of juggling all of the areas of the business and keeping those running and having to have a really strong working knowledge is very difficult,
Sure.
especially running large companies for CEOs. So they typically, have a head of HR, chief officer over HR, and they abdicate that responsibility there typically. The problem with that is when we abdicate our decision-making power and our responsibility for the culture of the organization to one department, then we are constantly having to use that department to fight to get that attention and the need to bought in from every other area.
Right.
And that really is that breakdown. The CEO has to, there was a book that was wrote called Learning to Lead. It was incredible. It's written by a former CEO of Aetna who did the massive turnaround back in the earlier 2000s. And basically, he had said that the the CEO has to understand that he is the one solely responsible for culture. He can then use initiatives and use HR as a partner on how do we implement this and look at it across the board. But if the chief executive officer is not the foremost ambassador of culture, it will always be an uphill battle to get culture implemented into the organization.
That's a great point. So, a lot of people that listen to this show are either solopreneurs or entrepreneurs with a small team. How do you recommend that they step into this idea at that early stage?
Yes. I honestly, working with small businesses and entrepreneurs in that early stage are some of my favorite. I did a lot of work with a startup earlier on in that, and it's because you can intentionally design something and you're not having to fight for it. And typically when you're hiring a few people to come and work with you when you're a startup, they are very passionate about your mission. You can get them bought in and they feel like they are really helping you create it. It's not just you creating this mission, but when people feel that they can come alongside you and build something really incredible that they can be a part of. And so you have that opportunity when you're a small business owner or again, an entrepreneur who's going to be hiring your first or your second person to work with, you have an opportunity to invite them in to build. And when you can do that shift, and that's a hard shift sometimes for entrepreneurs, especially when you've been a solopreneur, is it's yours, it's your baby.
Right.
And the big part is shifting your mindset into actually, this is it's kind of like when you're raising kids, at some point you actually have to let them become their own.
Yeah.
And your job is to steward and foster them really well. And so as your company grows, it is okay, this is not my baby. This is something that I am opening up to allow other people to make it and to become the greatest it can be, right? When you have other people who are bringing their strengths and their gifts and talents and their visions and their purpose and their passion into helping make this bigger than you even, or themselves, people are excited. So I would just say invite people into that process, let them be a
Mhm.
part of it. Be very intentional in understanding that culture is much more nuanced than it is about just writing a bunch of values and saying this is who we are.
Right.
um, and so yeah, just making sure that you're really every decision, every even the way you decide to set up your systems and processes, that's going to feed into the culture that you're creating. And so just knowing that and holding that responsibility in high regard.
It's so funny because like people look at company culture and you're right. They think like, oh, well, we have a badminton table in the conference room. So like we've got that covered. Like, no, not really.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
And I talk to people about culture all the time, and it's like, especially pre-COVID, it's like, well, we are a casual work environment.
right.
No one wears ties, and yes, we have a game room. We do office, happy hour every Friday at this and I'm like, those are awesome, fun things and perks that you're offering, and people are gonna love. A lot of people will love that and engage. I'm like, let's talk about though your microcultures that are
Yeah.
popping up within
Yeah.
that, and
Uh,
really look at it.
What an amazing opportunity that, everybody working from home and shifting and, taking those environments away really probably shed so much light on like what you're saying, really what your culture is. That's incredible. Because I'm sure that was something you fought a lot before. Because I'm sure a lot of people thought like, yeah, no, we got this in the bag. How do you handle, because there's so many people now at positions where maybe their job title is a little loose, or they just see an area that they could fit into. What is your advice for somebody inside of a company that wants to shift, wants to make a pivot, knows that their skill set could do something else or achieve something else, or maybe it's a job that's not even there yet, but they know, what do you recommend for them?
Mm. So there's so that's a very so I'm going to give you a layered answer within that. One
And
of the
both for the leader too, to notice that, like to recognize, oh, they're not quite in the right position, or they have this amazing skill set that they weren't hired for, but like, wow, what a gift.
Yes. So I will say from that standpoint, that is where, to me, that goes into so much of how we lead. And that's why leadership, investing in leaders, and creating a culture that sees that and tells leaders that they have to lead from that example is really important, because
Yeah.
I think we have tons of people who leave companies or get pushed out, even let go, who could have been incredible assets, but they were not stewarded well. They weren't put in the right spot. They were not seen for the strengths and giftings. And then on top of that, even if they did see that, they were basically told, well, until you can learn how to master an area that you're not necessarily great at, we will not promote you because we don't want it to look like we're promoting poor behavior. It's like, as
Right.
opposed to, let's put you in the right seat on the bus so that you
Right.
can bring
Right.
your skill set. So I would say for the leader side, be willing to find the strengths in your people, and don't let your ego get in the way of saying, well, they're not performing great here, so I don't necessarily want to encourage, and say, well, it's okay if you're a low performer, we'll move you into something else. Like, no, actually, like these are people who have incredible talents, and they can be put best to use and oftentimes in other places. And if you will harness that, it's actually going to help increase the company's ability to be successful. And that's what you're there for as the leader. You're there to steward that part, and you're being
Right.
entrusted for it. When you're not doing that, you're failing the company and your people. Now, from the person standpoint, I will say one of the hardest things is the fact of there's this idea of pie. And basically, it's like we all have our pie, and that's our performance, our image, and our exposure. And oftentimes, in order to be able to get, moved, be able to have a leg to stand on to say, I think I would be more better utilized in this area. I think my strengths could be used here, and I think I would really help the company doing XYZ. In order to do that, typically you have to perform really well in what you're doing today. Now,
Hmm.
again, that's where I feel like there needs to be a big change in leadership side. But for you, the thing you can do is really focus in on your performance and your image. Get really great with that. And performance is, how you are achieving goals, letting people into the work that you're doing, making sure that you are, anticipating the needs and working really hard, even if it's an area you're not super gifted in. How do you improve your performance? An image is about how you show up. It is about how you speak. It is about how you present yourself, especially, in the land of Zoom. And now I'm working from home. It's easy to be like, we're all working from sweatpants and sweatshirts. And instead of, okay, well, what's the image I'm putting out there? And even the image of how my body language and all of those things. Do I show up on camera or do I always turn it off? So work on those areas, and that's going to give you the ability to have more exposure, and then have very real honest conversation with your boss. I would say do the work, put together a development plan for yourself. Basically, it outlines, hey, these are the areas I'm going to improve in my performance. These are the stretch areas and these are my strengths, and this is how I would like to start contributing, and present that to them. So do a lot of that work on the don't just be like, I think I would love to do this.
Right.
And
Be
but come with a
prepared.
yeah, come with a plan, and then say, I understand that their, resources are thin right now, and we may not be able to afford me and time to go and work on some of those areas. Or, we may not be able to hire me for a different role. But how can I start investing in that so that when that becomes available, I could be first thought of, right? And is it okay if I spend maybe 10% of my time investing in this? And even bring a lot of statistics of what it will do. So bring some data of, okay, if I spend this time here, I believe it actually is going to produce this, this revenue, or cut back this on this time, or help this process run more efficiently. Like show the ROI.
Right.
I think all of that is really important.
That's brilliant. I had so many people come to me and talk about, I don't enjoy my job anymore. I've been there for 15 years. I just want to quit and start a business. And it turns out that they actually do love the environment. They love the people they're working with, but they've grown out of their job title and
Mhm.
just need a change. So, I've had quite a few people tell me, um, that's what they were looking to do. And after having that conversation, we've figured out different ways for them to step up in a different way in their current company and present that. I think that's all really wise advice, though, being very organized and coming to the table with, here's what I've researched, here's what I found, and here's how I can provide more value, but also giving yourself a little more, if you want to stay at a company for that long, you're going to get bored. And if you're not growing, um, and you're not given the opportunity to grow, if you can make that opportunity happen for yourself, I
Mhm.
just always think it's a better choice. If you're already happy with where you're at, how can you make it fit you better rather than going and searching something else out? But yeah,
Right.
that makes a lot of sense. Um, all right. Well, where can people find you? That I have a large client list that I think could benefit from working with you. But anyone that's listening, and if this is resonating, what's the best avenue to reach you?
Yeah, so you can, my website is kristenknowles.co, and that's KristenKnowles.co. So you can easily find me there. And then, interested in, any of this work, you can email info@kristenknowles.co, and someone from my team would be able to reach out and provide any information, whether that is through individual coaching or even from working with companies. And that's one of the things. So, last year, historically, I've worked mostly with companies and bringing in a lot of these solutions and helping them and working with the executive team and all of that. And then last year it was, okay, there's a big need for leadership, and there's a big need for leaders to develop and to be supported in this time. There's a big need for a lot of people who are started businesses, and they are entrepreneurs with small teams or small businesses, and they need support. And so we started a coaching branch of the company. And so now we actually are working one-on-one with leaders. So even if your company doesn't have any of this, but you want to work on some of these areas, then we can work one-on-one with you. And so that's something that we do. We started last year. We're about to start taking applications for our Brave Leaders Intensive program. And so that will actually take leaders through a very deep dive intensive of one-on-one working with us and really helping them to achieve balance, really reconnect to their purpose, develop a lot of this self-inner work so that then they can become very executive, strategic leaders and scale their businesses and their teams and their leadership. So that's opening in March. And so I'll give you the link. And so feel free to go there if you want to learn more about that.
Yes. So Kristen will have her own unicorn page on tribeofunicorns.com, and everything, all these links will be there as well as in the show notes. So if you guys want to reach out, you can reach her there. Well, thank you so much. I think it's such a crazy time for a lot of leaders right now, and having companies like yours that help support what's going on and help them show up best for their team is so important. So thank you for coming and telling us about your journey and telling us how you serve.
Thank you, Kendra. It's such a pleasure being here.
Kristen, thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you guys got a lot out of this. I know myself, I've seen a lot of these leadership issues, and I've also suffered from a lot of these leadership issues. So hearing people like Kristen really gives some insight on how we can grow as leaders, how we can help our teams succeed, and if you're a solo entrepreneur, how you can build your company from the base up, and different things to put in place so that when you are ready to hire, you have those systems and structure and that culture set already. Come back to tribeofunicorns.com and let me know, what did you guys get out of this one? I'll see you next Sunday with another episode of Tribe. Have a great week.